You know, when you've been through some pain, you've been through some hurt, you've been through some hard relationships, some toxic, negative relationships. Maybe you struggle with people pleasing, you struggle with needing validation from other people, and you look back on that version of yourself and you think about all the things that you've been through, and you think about how you allowed things that you shouldn't have allowed. You settled for certain situations, certain relationships that you should have never settled for. And instead of just seeing the situation as, man, that was a messed up situation, that person was wrong, I needed to leave them, break up with them, instead of just looking at that situation as what you needed to walk away from, you know you've grown when you can look back at that situation and say, man, I needed to break up with the version of who I was in that situation. See, you could be so focused on breaking up with the person that you fail to see that the real breakup is the old version of you, that version of you that needed the approval of that other person, that version of you that began to have people pleasing as an addiction, as a habit that you began to repeat over and over again, and then getting to a place in your life to say, I no longer want to be that person. I no longer want to settle for that relationship. I no longer want to settle in that situation. It is time for me to move forward in who I know I am called to be. And when you get to that place in your life, you can no longer walk back to who you once was, because you know that you have outgrown that. You know that you are no longer in that position anymore. You know that it is time for you now to thrive and to grow and to get to the next level of your life through perseverance, through courage, through determination, and knowing that you can't look back anymore. It is time for you to move forward now and to do all the things you know that God has called you to. You know, that version of you was trying to survive. See, you didn't know how to thrive. You didn't know how to thrive in that negative relationship. You didn't know how to thrive in that dead end job. You didn't know how to thrive in that situation that was beneath you. And so you were surviving. You were just getting through it. You was just going through the motions, and you really wasn't in tune or in touch with who you really were. See, you have forgotten yourself because of that situation. You allowed that situation to cause you to forget who you really was. You allowed that situation to define you instead of you knowing your truth, you knowing your value, you knowing your worth. And so now it is time for you to get out of that survival mode. It is time for you to thrive into who you know God has called you to be. So you got to understand, when you're in a cycle of people pleasing, it's not just about being kind, and people pleasing is not about kindness, but people pleasing is operating in a desperate energy. Is getting in this mode of you being desperate for the validation of another person, for the approval of another person. And so you begin to please other people. And in the midst of you pleasing another person, you are neglecting yourself. You are avoiding facing who you are, facing your truth. And you find yourself in this cycle of self-betrayal because you are so focused on pleasing another person and gaining their acceptance. See, you're failing to realize the only acceptance you need is the acceptance of yourself. You need to learn to accept yourself, to love yourself, to approve yourself, to tell yourself that you are enough, to tell yourself that you don't need another person's validation. You don't need another person to pick you up and to make you feel that you're worthy, but you are worthy within. You are enough within. You don't need other people to validate you. So getting that desperate energy off of you is important. Letting go of the need to receive from another person what you're not giving to yourself. See, most people don't realize the emotional shame that they're carrying around in life because of past relationships. You may not realize how that shame has been weighing you down. You feel embarrassed about what you tolerated and how you allowed certain things that were beneath you and how you watered yourself down just to be accepted and approved in that environment. And then you begin to be ashamed of how long you stayed, and you have all of this regret, and you're telling yourself, why did I tolerate that? Why did I deal with that? I'm ashamed of who I was and who I became in that situation. Listen, it is time to you to release yourself from the shame and the pain of your past. It is time for you to move forward in the calling that you know God has on your life. See, as long as you're carrying that shame, it's going to hold you back. It's going to keep you in a place of distraction. It's going to keep you in a place of needing other people and being desperate for approval of others because you're ashamed and you need somebody else to make you feel better about yourself. But you got to release that shame and that pain of your past. And you do that by stepping into who you know you are called to be, by letting go of the past, by forgiving yourself, by letting go of all the resentment and all the things that you have held on to that has weighed you down, because you can't take that baggage into your next level of your life. You have to release that and free yourself of the baggage and the pain that you have been carrying around. Let it go. Let go of who you thought you should have been and who you wasn't and what didn't happen the way that it should have happened and why that person did what they did to you and how dare they do that to you. Let that go. Learn the lesson. See that situation as a situation in your favor that allowed you to grow, that allowed you to get to the next level of your life, that allowed you to thrive into who you know you are and who you're called to be. Don't allow that situation to hold you back. Don't allow that person to hold you back anymore. It is time for you to move forward now in the destiny and the calling on your life. Because the truth is, some of us, we confuse survival with love. We get into this pattern of performing and we sacrifice and we lose ourselves just to feel chosen, just to feel that we're enough because of that person's approval. But in the end of that situation, you don't just lose the person in the past relationship, you lose yourself. You lose who you really are, the core of who you really are. See, you lost yourself in that relationship, and it is now time for you to find yourself into knowing who you are moving forward. You lost yourself in that situation that wasn't for you. You lost yourself in that opportunity, in that job that wasn't for you. You was trying to keep up with something that wasn't aligned with who you are. And so you looking for yourself now because you found yourself in this pattern of seeking validation, seeking approval, seeking just some type of strength in that environment of survival mode that you've lost yourself. And so now it's time for you to focus on who you really are, who you are called to be now in this life. See, this is what happens when your abandonment issues and fears begin to control your life. See, those abandonment issues, the fear of somebody leaving you and, maybe your childhood history of not having someone there for you, whether it was a parent or just someone in your family that you felt abandoned you or a friendship. And so what happens is you get in these relationships where you're doing all that you can to prevent the abandonment. And so you're willing to settle and you're willing to just do whatever and tolerate things in the relationship that you should no longer tolerate and you should never have tolerated, but it's because your pain is leading and guiding your path. And you got to release yourself from that. You have to release yourself from the pattern of seeking validation because of your abandonment issues. It only leads you into this scarcity mindset where you feel like you're lacking so much and you feel like you just don't have enough and you're always just empty of what it is you're seeking. empty of acceptance, empty of feeling like you are enough, because you're not tapping into who you really are on the inside. You're seeking external validation from other people, and you're disconnected from who you really are, who God says you are, who your soul really is. You have no clue, and you're empty of that knowledge because you're so busy seeking external validation. And so this continual cycle of needing validation from another person and needing that a person's approval, and you looking back on how you were in past situations and past relationships, and you're feeling like you're not enough, and you're mad at yourself, and you're like, I need to be free of that past version of myself. And you're wondering, what if I act like that again? What if it comes up again? How do I know I'm healed? How do I get myself free of this? I no longer want to be in this place again. But you got to ask yourself, am I living for the applause, or am I living for alignment? See, here's the thing. You could be out here chasing the applause of others, chasing the validation of others, chasing the approval of others, chasing others' acknowledgement of you, while you are out of alignment with who you really are. And instead of you chasing after the applause, it is time for you to align yourself with who you are called to be, who God says you are, and knowing who you are and walking in that purpose and that power, and liberating yourself with the courage to step out and be who you really are, without the fear of judgment, without the fear of people not liking you. Getting to a place where it doesn't matter if people like you. It doesn't matter if people applaud you. It doesn't matter if people accept you, because you accept you, because you see yourself as enough, because you validate yourself, and knowing that you having the approval of yourself is enough for you to thrive and align with who God has called you to be. So you got to understand that it is time for you to tap into who you really are. And you do this by building yourself up from the inside out. See, the real meaning of self-esteem is really self-trust. It's getting to a place in your life where you can really, truly trust yourself. Trust yourself to keep the promises you made for yourself. When you said you were going to work on your mind, body, and spirit, you kept that promise. When you said you were going to get fit, you're going to get healthy, you move forward and you follow through with that. You didn't just say it. And so when you follow through with the promises you have for yourself, this is how you build self-trust. And this is how you begin to thrive in who you are and who you are called to be, because you're now living your life based on your own standards. You're not focusing on getting the approval of other people and having the standards of other people and other people saying you're good enough, because you know you are doing the work that you know that you promise to yourself. And as you do this, as you move forward in self-trust, trusting yourself to keep the promises that you made for yourself, you're going to see your life transform. So many people right now are mad at themselves because they trusted the wrong people. They put their trust in someone who betrayed them. They put their trust in someone who did them wrong. However, all along, while they're putting their trust in other people, they lack self-trust. They don't keep the promises that they had for themselves. And so they wonder why they can't trust another person. But first, it starts with self-trust. It starts with you keeping the promises you made to yourself. You following through on those goals that you said you wanted to do. You following through on who you said you were going to become. Following through on the things that you promised to yourself. See, you get so caught up in what other people aren't doing for you that you fail to realize all the things that you are not even doing for yourself. So instead of just being in that place where you're just angry about your past, you're angry about that old relationship, that toxic relationship, and the breakup, and all of those things, I want you to focus on breaking up with that past version of yourself that settled for those things, that allowed the pain, that allowed the heartbreak, that allowed the manipulation. I want you to break up with that past version of yourself and begin to move forward in who you know you are called to be, and allow yourself to thrive in the truth of your authenticity. So if you are ready to go to the next level in your life and thrive and overcome people pleasing and external validation and all of those things, I want to encourage you to go ahead and click the link in this message and connect with me. I want to hear from you. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it. Also, let me know, what are you dealing with right now? Where are you in your life? What do you need to do to get to the next level of your life? Where are you? Do you have any questions, any relationship advice that you need? Go ahead and connect with me and let me know. Reach out to me, click the link, and let's connect. And I want to encourage you to share this message with others, subscribe, and also be sure to stay tuned. And I look forward to connecting with you in the next episode.